Well, the system basically moves material, and it moves it very cheaply. I often get asked what the best application would be. For surface, you're best to have a minimum distance, and the larger the quantities, the more competitive it's going to be. Because once you put the capital asset in, it doesn't care whether you run it 10 minutes a day for a couple hundred tons, or you run it 24 hours steady for tens of thousands of tons or 100,000 tons a day. And we've done designs in 100 and 200,000 tons a day. Actually, those were for underground right here in British Columbia. And in a number of cases with a customer, what we were looking at is we're looking at how can we put it into an existing structure and work within that. In a new mine design, you have the opportunity, let's take an underground example, to use the same technology of fixed, reliable infrastructure we use in a skip compartment and send the skip compartment three-dimensionally out to the ore body, even in the ore body if you want it. And that's a game changer in mine design. The system doesn't need ventilation. It operates in a drift all by itself. There's no one around to get hurt. There's no one around if it's still operating when you're doing blast ventilation and your fumes are going through the Railveyor drift. No reason to shut it down. There's no risk to any people in doing that. And that's very, very different than operating trucks between shifts and our conventional setups. Plus, there's a range of facilities you no longer need. You no longer need great big garages. You don't need huge drifts. You don't need a lot of ventilation. Yeah, in a new mine, if you take the Railveyor fundamentally to your stopes and you do some loading, and perhaps with smaller equipment than what you're used to, it eliminates a huge number of things. And when I think back on an operating career, you think of hang-ups and ore passes, blasting ore passes, wear plates, the number of things that we had trouble with, you no longer need them. Excavation of huge garages and the amount of ground support in big intersections. If you can eliminate the risk, you can't get any safer than that. You no longer have to do a number of activities that we found so problematic in a mine. And when they're a problem, a main ore pass, a chute, your reconstruction of that puts you down for a long period of time. And it's very disruptive to a continuous flow. Also, you have to look at the technology, and the equipment is very movable. It's very extendable. You can extend the Railveyor system and put extra trains in and largely keep the same capacity at a short distance as you do twice as far and 3 and 4 times as far. You can't do that with a truck because the trucks interact, because you need more ventilation, because you need more garages, you need a fleet of operators, and you end up with interference. With an automated system like the Railveyor, you don't end up with that. It's very, very different. And when you want to move to the next mine, moving all these small pieces of equipment out is a very easy thing to do compared to moving mammoth trucks, cutting them up into small bits, hoisting them up if you don't have the luxury of a ramp. Very different. Railveyor was installed at a mine that I had been area manager in the past, and the guy that I had worked with at a number of mines, Len Van Eyck, was in charge of the project. And at the time he was telling me, you've got to come over here and see this. And he wrote a letter about how a Railveyor mine could be different. And a lot of what I talked about earlier was exactly from Len's comments about no more blasting hang-ups, no more chute problems, no more ore passes, the number of things that he had seen as very problematic in his history of running mines that the Railveyor could eliminate. So I had, from people that I had a lot of confidence in, including mine operators and mine managers, had a lot of good things to say about what they saw about the new technology at the time, and that was basically 15 years ago now. It was an email sent on a Friday by Alex Henderson, who had run the Railveyor project for Valet at the 114, and quite a successful project. He sent an email to Railveyor's chairman, and all it said was, Jim, if I were you, I'd hire this guy. So the next morning I got a call from Jim Fisk. We spent about 3 hours on the phone, and he said, our guys are down in Toronto at the PDAC convention. That was basically my start with going down and meeting the team with Railveyor, and within the week I worked with them for full-time for 3 years. My experience with Railveyor, both internally with the people I've worked with, fantastic people that want to make change, brilliant people, and the customers. They've been great to work with. I don't have to do any of that, but I like doing that, and that's why I'm here. Why do I think it's the right technology? And it ticks a lot of the boxes. When I look at the last 50 years or so of mining, there's very few very fundamental changes in the industry over a long period of time. And this is one real game changer, and it ticks most of the boxes when you think about where we want to be. We have to bring our costs down. Well, this doesn't require a big space. It runs basically in a skip compartment size instead of a huge drift. You can take all the assets up and move them very quickly when you're done and strip it down. It's very environmentally friendly. It's very low risk and safety, and there's no emissions from it. There's no heat generation. It doesn't require ventilation underground. It ticks a lot of the boxes of, if someone had asked us 40 years ago, what are the things you wish a haulage system could do, that would have been our Christmas wish list at the time. And now we've got a technology that in most applications can do all of those things. A lot of people are stuck with the way the industry's been successful in the last 50 years, especially starting, say, the 60s. The economy of scale, you had to go bigger. You went bigger with drill holes, you went bigger with scoop tram buckets, you went bigger with dragline buckets. You know, I think a big muskie in Ohio, a 220 cubic yard dragline. When we got off the bus and this thing turned, it was so big it felt like the earth was turning, because that thing we're looking at, in your mind, that's too big to move. That's how we got our costs down. And if you've got infinite sized ore bodies, that economy of scale still makes sense. The problem is the vast majority of new projects in the world aren't that lucrative. They aren't infinite, a gazillion tons. They're much smaller and much selective. And we have to be smarter. But it's a different approach than when we were made successful by the bigger is always the right answer. And it was for many years. So it's a very big change. It's like changing a large ship's direction. It's not just when you're in the safety department, but in any role, especially any supervisory or managerial role, you're accountable for your crews, and you're accountable to their families for the results. And you can't get away from that. So, you know, you talk about the safety guy. The safety guy is a team of people at the mine that either produce a good result or not. And I've been fortunate, in particular, of being with a team at Coppercliff Mine, of winning 3 Ryan Awards in a row, which we call our hat trick. Probably the proudest moment of my career is standing there with the team, you know, knowing that we sent people home safe every night for 3 years on a world-class basis. That was awesome. Yeah, you could think about with the Railveyor, if I had a mine in Railveyor, maybe I'd have a little less gray hair right now, but having 4 daughters, that could be part of it. But one of the things that kept me awake at night was, you know, truck operators on graveyard shift trying to stay awake and not pile a truck into the side of the ramp, which happened to us. There's always that risk when you've got people operating monotonous equipment that's repetitive, that you're going to get an error or a problem and it's going to hurt somebody. Or you're going to have a vehicle fire or something like that that's going to put a number of people at immediate risk in a mine. To be able to eliminate those hazards is something that I can't imagine not wanting to take advantage of those opportunities and eliminate those sleepless nights, those concerns, those investigations, and the concerns often with trucks of people don't want to talk about the number of near misses or incidents, or you're following a Jeep and you're a supervisor and you're in a hurry, you get behind a Jeep and you want to pass them and make a bad decision. It's no different than on the highway when you're impatient. And you know, most of the time you get away with that, and sometimes something dreadful happens. Well, if you could eliminate that and take that risk right out of your operation, I mean, why would you not want to see, hey, is there anything here unreasonable about taking advantage of that and putting that system in your mind?